Who doesn't love seeing penguins? Konami would make penguin cards all throughout Yu-Gi-Oh! And then eventually give it its own archetype. They were even kind enough to make them accurate to real-life penguins by making them the bottom of the food chain. Such is life when your predators are killer whales, seals, and tier 1 decks. Penguins are probably not going anywhere anytime soon, but we can honestly say they have a place in our hearts, and in today's video on why penguins flopped in the TCG. To be fair, it shouldn't be surprising that penguins failed, as they were never really an archetype in the first place, and more just cards that happen to be penguins. This statement can be backed up by the first few penguins introduced in the TCG. Spell Ruler brought with us the first penguin monster, Penguin Knight. This level 3 water aqua monster stood at a fearful 900 attack. When it's sent directly from the deck to the graveyard by a card effect your opponent controls, both players unite their graveyards into their deck, shuffle them, and form a new deck. While this card's effect is very awkward and didn't see play at all, it's remembered for its unique wording, as it's the only Yu-Gi-Oh card to use the word unite, joining in the ranks of the other unique worded cards. It's only fitting a card this suave and gentlemanly gets to use the word unite in its effect. Just look at its chiseled beak. Outside of that, the effect was terrible for its time, as few cards milled your opponent's deck back in 2002. Even then, this card had more of a chance of being a dead draw and summoned as the world's most dapper monster with 900 attack. Also, there was Flying Penguin from McDonald's promotional pack. It has the honor of being one of the many cards only obtainable by Mickey D's, and had the honor of being one of the many cards I lost in my room when I was 7. Alright, so it's fair to say both cards didn't inspire anyone to collect penguins, let alone play them. One was a card with a super conditional effect, and the other was only recognizable because you could get it alongside getting high cholesterol. So, a penguin being a knight or flying wouldn't work, but what if it was a soldier? Starter Deck Joey gave us that answer in 2003 by introducing the GOAT, the Penguin of the Hour, Mr. Rip and Get Flipped, none other than Penguin Soldier. Its flip effect simply bounced any 2 monsters back to the hand. It was one of the most dangerous effect monsters if you'd ask any Yu-Gi boomer how much they hated seeing this card. This simple card was an actual behemoth back in slower formats of Yu-Gi-Oh, as there were minimal special summons going on, and by minimal, I mean almost none. The lack of special summoning monsters mostly resorted to normal / tribute summoning monsters, and Penguin Soldier was one of those cards to capitalize on this misfortune. Having your monsters bounce back to your hand by the Lord of Flip was nearly devastating, as most of the time, you'd swing with the monster you just summoned that turn, only for it to be back in your hand staring at you. Even worse case is that you don't attack with your normal summon monster, end your turn, and let Penguin Soldier rip and watch your opponent bounce your monster and Penguin Soldier back to your hand, since Penguin Soldier targets up to any 2 monsters on the field. There aren't enough ways to say how impactful everyone's favorite penguin was back in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! These days, however, the card sees no play due to how quick the game has become. Flip effect monsters don't strike fear in the hearts of players anymore, as they need to be flipped to have any usefulness, which is why flip effect monsters fell out of favor in the TCG. No matter how strong an effect is on a flip monster, the card has to be face down first, and either you need your opponent to attack into it, or flip it up manually after you set on the previous turn. Your opponent could just continue with their day, make their board, and then handle the face down ball of terror however they see fit, and not have to worry about interfering with their turn. They could pop it, banish it, return to the hand or deck instead of attacking a card that needs to be flipped. Why battle and trigger an effect when all of these other options are easily obtainable? So, if you're expecting to see the good old set Penguin Soldier and Pass trick to work, you're setting yourself up to get scrapped at your locals. Nonetheless, this card is considered one of the best penguin cards in the game. It wouldn't be until 2004 that the Penguins would get another card introduced in the TCG set, Rise of Destiny. Nightmare Penguin was a level 4 water monster with 900 attack and 1800 defense. Many may recognize from the Yu-Gi-Oh! TV series when it was the Deckmaster for Crump, a man obsessed with one thing every human being doesn't want a penguin to be associated with: work and corporations. Other than that, it's a pretty cool card. It gives all water monsters on the field 200 attack, and when it's flipped face up, you can return 1 card your opponent controls to their hand. Though this card isn't a true flip monster, it still operates like one, including during the battle phase. If a monster attacks and destroyed, its effect will activate during the damage step before being sent to the graveyard. What separates cards like Nightmare Penguin from flip monsters is that its effect is flip base. So, though its effect activates the same way Penguin Soldier does, it doesn't get stopped by cards that prevent flip effects from activating, like Ceasefire or Swords of Revealing Light. So, if any of those cards flip Nightmare Penguin up, it will still resolve. This was all the more reason to run Nightmare Penguin alongside Penguin Soldier. That's not including that it increased attack power, but it had a high defense that could wall off low attack monsters, and could choose monsters, spells, and traps to bounce back to your opponent's hand. Its only downside was that it wasn't a Penguin Soldier, who still had the higher upside due to its possibility being recycled back to the hand if it wasn't destroyed, thanks to its bounce effect that could target monsters on either player's side of the field. So, with the creation of Nightmare Penguin and the plethora of penguin support seen in the anime, there was a small part of the community that looked forward to the new penguin cards. It just took 8 years for Konami to get Penguin some new tools to work with finally. A new penguin arrived in 2011's TCG set, Generation Force. The Great Emperor Penguin made its debut. This is a level 5 aqua monster that you can tribute to special summon 2 penguin monsters from your deck except itself. At first, this card was written off as awful because it needed to be tribute summoned, and the number of penguin monsters worth summoned at the time was too minuscule. The card started to pick up later along the line when a certain continuous spell card named Royal Penguin's Garden was made, which we'll go into later. Even with that certain card, the results this card gave were mixed. As great as it is to get 2 monsters for free with their effects not negated, this card was weak to the standard hand trap, and even called by the grave. Since the card needed to be tributed as cost for its effect, it would be in the graveyard when it resolved its effect. Called by could simply remove it from the grave to negate its effect and all other copies of the Great Emperor Penguin to nullify it. So, even though Great Emperor got better with more support that came out, the card could be described as a fragile starter for penguins. Konami then continued to support penguins in the TCG set Abyss Rising. Puny Penguin was the newest star of the show, coming in with level 1 with 400 attack and 200 defense. When it's sent to the graveyard after being flipped face up, you can target 1 penguin monster in your graveyard and special summon in face up attack position or face down defense position. It's really cute, adorable, and 2 conditional. Although free revival is terrific and having the choice to bring back the penguin of your dreams face down or face up, the card mainly depended on your opponent to send it to the graveyard. Even if you get your opponent to trigger it and get the monster of your choice, your opponent would still maintain their turn and have free real estate to deal with your cards and possibly send them back to the ice caps. Konami still didn't give up on penguins and kept sprinkling in mediocre support for it. This continued in the TCG set Abyss Rising, as 2 new flightless avians were given to the archetype, starting with the most useful of them all, Bolt Penguin. No, not falling for it? What if I say it can be used with the Rescue Rabbit for a rank 3 Xyz play? Not working for you? Well, that's understandable. It didn't work for anyone else either. However, the latter did turn some heads though. No Penguin was a level 3 aqua monster with 1600 attack and 100 defense. Whenever a penguin monster's effect is activated during either player's turn, special summon this card from your graveyard. If a card is returned to the hand by the effect of a penguin monster, banish that monster instead. No Penguin synergized amazingly with both Nightmare Penguin and Penguin Soldier. Its effects also let it special summon itself to the field with an effect that chain blocks. That makes it the last card of the chain link to whichever penguin effect you use and makes it difficult for your opponent to interact with those first monsters in the chain. As positive as this seems, there were still some issues that need to be sorted out, like getting no penguin to the graveyard and keeping your face down penguins alive long enough for this to happen. Remind you that it's been 10 years since the Penguin Soldier was considered a runnable card, and the game had advanced to have more involvement with heavy combo cards and stronger effects. Flip effects at this point in the game were irrelevant because they didn't have a way to interact with your opponent. So even though no penguin took the flip effects up a notch, it still didn't hide the fact that regular flip effects were outdated and easy to get around. Needless to say, the penguins were still not playable in the regular TCG. They were just slow mechanic-wise due to the hindrance of needing to be flipped to have any impact. They also didn't have the luxury that the future flip effect archetypes would have. If you compare them to Shaddolls or even Subterrors, both these archetypes have flip effect monsters, but solely don't lean on the monsters needing their flip effects activated to advance their gameplay. Shaddolls benefit from fusion summoning their flip monsters as materials. Shaddolls also have secondary effects when sent to the graveyard by effects. Subterrors have flip effects but can turn themselves face down with their effects, and their higher level flip effects can be special summoned from your hand if you control nothing but face down monsters when one is flipped face down. They also have support like Subterror Final Battle that can manipulate their monsters' positions and even boost their attack or stop Subterror monsters from being negated. Without the pluses both these archetypes had, they probably would just be as useless as penguins. As uneventful as the archetype was turning out, Konami kept sprinkling support for the penguins randomly. This time they'd introduced Guard Penguin in the TCG set Duelist Saga in 2017. If you would take effect damage, you could special summon this card and gain life points equal to the damage you took. Nothing says I'm useless like a monster specifically meant for effect damage protection. Let's move on. Penguin Torpedo was up 3 years after the disappointing Guard Penguin gave players, coming out in Battles of Legend Armageddon Booster Pack. It had 550 attack and 300 defense. It had the ability to attack your opponent directly, and when it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, target and take control of one of your opponent's level 6 or lower monsters until the end phase. That monster couldn't attack and had its effects negated. Also, this card is destroyed at the end of the damage step if it attacks. That's not what it did in the anime. Torpedo was a very unique addition to the Penguins. Its effect didn't really help with the fact that Penguin's flip mechanics were still abysmal and needed help. Still, it did give our feather-footed friends a target for Great Emperor to get and could do free damage while stagging monsters from your opponent, which greatly benefited you to use them for extra deck plays in the main phase 2 if possible. Sadly, this one card still didn't make Penguins worth playing. A fragile deck searcher that was level 5, effect damage reduction, and outdated flip effect mechanics just wouldn't cut it in 2020. Especially since we have these evil blue monsters with no defense called Link monsters. However, this minimal upside didn't help this card see play in Penguins. In a final desperate ploy and/or cash grab, Konami finally understood what we wanted in Penguins. Penguins with good effects and cute little costumes. Our wishes were finally delivered in Phantom Rage later that year in 2020. Move those Tri-Brigades, Raid Raptors, Virtual Worlds, and whatever the heck Alpha Beast is out of the way. Penguin support was here, and it was in the form of the synchro known as Penguin Brave. This level 6 2400 attack synchro required one tuner plus one or more non-tuners. Your opponent couldn't target your face-down monsters with card effects, and when it's synchro summoned, you get to special summon one penguin monster from your deck in face-down defense position. And when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can flip up one face-down water monster you control face up. Don't you love how it takes 12 plus years for Konami to print some sort of decent support for an old archetype? Penguin Brave helped the archetype immensely with the Penguins flip monsters issues, with being able to fetch the penguins you need immediately from your deck, plus you get to flip your monsters face up during your opponent's turn without praying that your opponent rams into your face down monsters or popping it before it gets resolved. With how great this synchro turned out, it'd be a shame if they forgot to give the deck a tuner, which they did. So the one job Konami forgot was to give us the new penguin monsters alongside the synchro, but instead shoved them in the pack that was a year away for God knows what. The deck had to resort to using Gladiator Beast Polar Penguin as their tuner of choice, which hilariously wasn't even made for the penguin archetype, but the Glacial Beasts. Remember them? Neither did Konami, so there was no harm or foul for this card in the archetype. It synergized perfectly with the Waterbird Gang. Even with the jank way this card was used, it was still a win for the Penguins as they got a card that at least boosted their consistency and their play and mechanics. The support got even better when the party members of the Penguin Brave were released in Burst of Destiny. Before we can even get to Burst of Destiny, Penguins received a treat from Brothers of Legend Booster Pack. Penguin Sword was an equipped spell card that could only be equipped to a penguin monster. It gains 800 attack, and whenever the equipped monster inflicts battle damage, return one card your opponent controls back to their hand. When an opponent's monster leaves the field by a penguin card effect and is returned to the hand or banished, negate the activated effects and cards in the field with the same original name until the end of the turn. The card was a solid equipped card that was searchable by Royal Penguin's Garden, and on top of that it offered penguins a type of negation that they sorely lacked. Popping this on a freshly summoned Penguin Brave made it a 3200 attack and made the Penguin Soldier you set even more frightening when flipped face up. Now with all that extra fluff out of the way, we can finally get to the Burst of Destiny support. Let's start with Royal Penguin's Garden and understand how much this card makes the deck manageable. It's a continuous spell card that searches a penguin card on activation. Once per turn during your main phase, you can decrease the level of one penguin monster by 1 in your hand or face up on the field, then discard one card. The effects of this card are the sole reason why Great Emperor Penguin is playable in the archetype. Its ability to decrease the level of Great Emperor makes it a level 4, immediately removing the need to tribute summon it. So now you could search Emperor Penguin off of Penguin Garden, decrease its level, play it for free, and activate its effect to fetch new cute penguins. You can even chain block to ensure the search is successful by discarding no penguin with Garden's effect. The addition of Royal Penguin Garden made all the difference in making penguins playable. But wait, there's more. Let's talk about 3 new additions to the penguin party. Penguin Squire was a level 5 Aqua Tutor monster. It can't be used as a synchro material except for a water monster. If a monster is set on your field, you can special summon this card from your hand, then reduce its level by 1 or 2. You can target one set monster, flip it face up, and its effects are negated unless it's a penguin monster. Penguin Ninja was a flip effect monster. When flipped, you can return 2 spell and trap cards to the hand. It also lets you target a penguin monster in the field and turn it back to face down defense position. Penguin Cleric was a level 3 Aqua monster that could be discarded from your hand to target and special summon one penguin monster from your graveyard destroyed by an opponent's card effect. It also carried the effect of giving one of your penguin monsters 600 attack until the end of the phase and gives you 600 life points. All 3 penguins gave penguins the synergy the main deck monsters needed in penguins. Squire's effect helped the deck immensely with turn 1 combos. It becomes a fantastic target for Emperor Penguin and helps Puny Penguin's effect off quickly. Its effect lets you flip Puny Penguin so you can meet the requirements to special summon back a penguin monster from the graveyard, which is more than likely the Emperor Penguin used to summon the 2 in the first place. Ninja Penguin was better spell trap removal and flip penguins face down to summon Squire, and Cleric can bring back destroyed penguins that your opponent popped. The restriction of Penguin Squire didn't really hinder it either, as the water attribute has some strong synchros, like Coral Dragon, Adamancipator, Dragite. However, they still had the issue of not having any negates to interact with your opponent's cards. Hand traps were also still your bane on turn 1. It doesn't matter how many monsters are available if your Emperor gets immediately impermed or ashed. Did I mention that spell and trap protections was also non-existent? All those Aqua monsters could get eaten alive by floodgates, making it a challenge to go second. Without any answers to floodgates like Skill Drain, Gozen's Match, or TCBOO, this deck falls flat on its adorable beak. So where do our adorable fluffy friends go from here? Easy, where all their tier 34 decks go. To Duel Links, where they've been thriving since the arrival of Penguin Soldier in 2022. Duel Links meta plays slow enough for flip effects to somewhat succeed, and this simple playstyle most decks in Duel Links fits our feathered friends perfectly. It's always great to see legacy support for a fan favorite archetype like the Penguins, but their support played like they are, cute. Flip effects don't really hit the mark as they used to anymore, and the mechanic is honestly too slow to keep up with the wombo combo playstyle that Yu-Gi-Oh currently has. They carry no negation outside of Penguin's Sword, and that only goes off if you successfully bounce something on the field back or banish it. It doesn't really protect your fragile board from meeting its end at various effects, making it hard to go second. So the deck is a flop, unfortunately. It won't win any major competition, but it does win in our hearts. Just look at them, they're all in cute little costumes role-playing as RPG characters. What more could a player ask for?